the Director of Horticulture at Dawes Arboretum, which we're located just about 6 miles south of Newark on Route 13. And oddly enough, I'm practicing on trees out of our nursery that should have been pruned. We have so much thing we're doing on the grounds, we don't tend to look at the trees that we've got right in our own nursery. So what I'm going to do is today I'm going to focus on just one of these young trees. If there's one thing I see driving through just about any town, for that matter, is that trees are planted when they're young, and nothing is done to them until it's obvious that something needs to be done. By then, it's too late. And you have to start calling in the arborist to start cabling and pruning out things like this. You've gone way beyond where it should have gone. So what I'm going to do is talk about what you should look for when you're training your young tree. And something I was going to cut out of the tree right away, I stopped myself because I realized it was a good teachable moment. When you buy your trees, it oftentimes will have tags on them. Or it might have a ribbon tied around one of the branches. Get those things off of the tree. Because as trees grow, they get bigger around and they get taller. And if something is on the branch, like this little tiny green tag right here, eventually that plastic doesn't rot, doesn't degrade fast enough. This limb grows so fast that it girdles the limb. Before you know it, the limb dies. So what you have to do is get those little things off the branches so they're not causing you a problem in the future. Now this one I just tied on to tell them I was taking it, so I'm not so worried about it. I'll take it off anyway. We label our trees at the Arboretum, and one of the hardest things is to keep the labels on the tree without girdling the branches. So we're constantly having to expand all those labels. Young trees grow, I should say this. When you plant a young tree in your yard, you want to decide right at the get-go whether you want to walk under that tree. When I say you want to decide what you want to do to do you want to walk under the tree or not? It's because wherever this limb comes off this tree now, that's the height that limb will be the rest of that tree's life. So if I want to walk under this tree, pardon? Say that again? Wherever a tree or branch arises from that trunk, that's the height that that branch will be for the rest of the life of that branch or the tree. I'll give you an example. If I were to take a nail and put it into a trunk of a tree right at my eye level, in 100 years, that nail is going to be right at my eye level. Because trees don't grow up. They grow longer at the tips, they get longer in the roots, and they get bigger around, but they do not grow up. That's why when you're in the woods and you see all those little carved initials on trunks, they're never up in the air, they're always right at the same level that your eye is. That's right where you can carve it. Except me, when I was younger, I'd crawl up a tree and carve one up 30 feet in the air just to be the devil's advocate.
What happens with the trees that are growing really tall? I mean, like if you bought a maple tree,
same distance, same thing.
It's not 40 feet when you buy it.
No, it's not. You're right. But it grew from the tips, not the trunk going up. In other words, that limb here is always going to be at that limb at that height. The growth comes off the tips up above. These get longer and higher, but these stay the same height off the ground. There's one difference, and that is if it gets heavy enough, they'll bend and come down lower. But where it arises here is always the same height. Now know what tree you have. Get the tree's label, look the tree up in the books, find out what it's supposed to do. Is it supposed to be a big tree? Is it supposed to be a small, bushy tree? Is it going to be wide? Because if you start pruning against what the genetics tell that tree to do, you're essentially trying to paddle upstream. The tree's genetics tell it what to do, and you're trying to prune it in a manner that it doesn't want to grow. That makes you have to work twice as hard to make it do what you want, and you're still not going to convince it. That's why when the guys go in with the chainsaws and they cut the tops out of trees, like, never top a tree, by the way. That's a really bad thing to do.
Hell the aspen,
Yeah.
would you?
But when they cut those tops of the trees off, it's 10 feet below the wires. The next year, they're right back up on the wires. That tree genetically wants to grow 60, 70 feet tall, and it's going to convince it. So this tree is a Japanese maple. This particular one is going to be about 25 to 30 feet when it's mature, but it's going to take a long time to get there. I would rather it not have this division right here. I would rather it have just one trunk, this one. So what I do is, and this goes for your trees at home, don't cut all the branches off your tree at once. Let's say, for instance, you've got a 7, 8 foot tree, and you're saying, okay, I want to be able to walk under the branches. Don't cut them all at once, because that changes the way that the wood is in the trunk. It also takes off the leaves, which the tree requires to produce sugars that makes its energy for its growth. So by taking too much foliage off, I've reduced the food that plant can make. So I want to do it slowly. I make smaller wounds. The tree grows faster, sturdier, without having to make all those big cuts. This is a several-year project. This is not something you do in a couple of weeks. That's what's nice about being a homeowner. I can go out and visit the tree once or twice a year, and I make a few cuts, and that's all I do. I don't want to do everything at once. That'd be hard on the tree, for that matter. I don't think I can take it either. I don't want to see the tree butchered that way. Oh, I can't say butchered. Excuse me. I was giving a talk and I said that once and I was corrected. Butchering is a very honest and professional job. A butcher has a lot of training goes into that. So now I just say they're molested. So far, nobody's yelling at that. So I don't want this limb to eventually be there. I want this one to be the main trunk. So I'm not going to do this because these two branches, these two right here, are almost the same size in diameter. That's a heck of a wound. I wanted it to stop the growth of this branch and let this one become more beefy. I want it to be a bigger branch. So by doing that,